like a sweet kiss you didn't see coming, like the sun sliding slow across your skin, like the scent of someone you loved but never forgot. This is Talking Toast, a space soaked in truth, tenderness, and transformation, where the hard conversations get held with soft hands. I'm your host, Coach G, life and relationship coach, walking with you through the fire and the healing. So breathe deep. Let the words hold you. Let the silence speak to you. And as always, grab your glass because we're about to talk and we're damn sure gonna toast. Hey, 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 hey. Welcome back to another episode of Talk and Toast. As always, am so excited to be here to share another episode with you all where we're talking about something real, something hard, something true. And so many times we don't have a space to talk about it, or we don't have people to sit down and talk about it with. Now, today's episode, we are talking about loving someone while you're learning and discovering yourself, which seems such like an oxymoron, but is very possible when it's two people connected together for the right reasons in the right way. And so maybe you've been there where you are loving someone, you're head over heels, but something in you whispers, wait, hold on. I don't even know me yet. Or you're holding on to someone else's heart, you giving them all of this comfort and safety and devotion. And meanwhile, your edges are fraying. Loving someone while you're loving yourself can be really messy, but it's also holy. It's necessary. And if it's done right, it changes everything. So I want to just first dive into this conversation by saying tapped into that, where I am learning and rediscovering who I am and walking through this process of what it looks like to be me, my likes, my dislikes, and all of the things that come along with relearning yourself. And here this person comes in my life, and I was hesitant at first. I'm not gonna lie, I was pure hesitation because you don't know what that person is bringing with them. If they're bringing baggage, if they're bringing like a broken heart, if they're bringing just fragments and pieces of themselves, which while you're in the process of discovering yourself, you don't need a person that is there that is completely broken, right? Now, understand that nobody ever comes into anything 100% whole. They just come with a better awareness and a better knowledge of who they are, that they have the tools and the tips and the tricks to navigate through certain things with a level of emotional intelligence and maturity. We seem to believe that people come completely healed, and they don't. Because every day you're healing from something, whether it's dealing with some trauma that you've dealt with at work, whether it's dealing with something that you're dealing with in your family, your child, like healing is ever evolving. Some things are more monumental than others. And in some situations, it's like, okay, that's not necessarily a trauma, but I do need to heal from this part of the dynamic that took place. Again, whether it's your child, whether it's work, whether it's a friendship, a relationship, someone in your family, what have you. And so as I'm walking through this process, and I'm going to talk about everything in this episode because baby, it was like a little bit of a roller coaster and I was like trying to find the rhythm, right? And I was like, oh, snap. Like, how am I going to do this? Because I really am feeling shorty, you know what I'm saying? Like, how am I gonna navigate this situation and at the same time still be loving and on myself while I'm still discovering myself? Because I will tell you, being in 2 marriages that didn't work out, it takes a toll on you. And when you really get to that space of like learning who you are and reflecting back as to why the marriages didn't work, and you're not pointing the finger at the other person anymore, but you're taking accountability and responsibility for the part that you played. And sometimes the part that is hard to accept is staying in a situation longer than you should have in hopes that it will work. And are you funneling and fueling this dream of like having a family and living like the Cosbys or keeping up with the Joneses or whatever? I know a couple Joneses, and baby, I don't want to keep up with them. But needless to say, no, it's the fact that, or it's the point that you always have to reflect where you are and are you ready for this? So I realized that when I got into this, there was this collision that happened. It was loving her and the collision of learning myself. And I'm still learning myself. Like, I don't want anybody to think that just because I have this podcast or because I have a title of a life coach that I'm not still learning and growing, because baby, I am. Right. And again, I feel like learning, evolving, and growing is a daily process. And so I didn't know how this collision was going to work out. And so, of course, because I'm into reading and I'm journaling and I'm praying and I'm meditating, I'm going through all of these, I start looking up some information because I've also taken some psychology classes and I'm like, there has to be some psychology behind this. Like, am I just crazy or like what is really good? Right. And so I was reading this article and it was saying like experts are saying that love isn't just butterflies. It is this thing, this psychology where it lights up parts of your brain, and the parts that light up are tied to reward and novelty and survival. But what about growth, right? What about learning yourself? And that, they say, is deeper, it's structural. And so I go on and reading in this article, and it's talking about something called the self expansion model in relationships where we fall in love and then we often try to include the other person into who we are, saying like we're taking their strengths, we're taking on a piece of their identity, we're taking on parts of who they are. And all while that is like so super beautiful, it is also very dangerous, especially if you haven't built the foundation of who you are yet, because in the process you'll lose yourself and you'll end up shrinking while you're loving big. So you're loving this person big and you want to see them succeed and be great and you want to love on them and nourish them and empower them and make sure that they are feeling loved and fueled and the whole 9 yards. And if you're not careful, not only will you not communicate with this person that you are loving what it is that you need from them, but you also won't be checking in with yourself. You won't be loving on yourself. And not only have I experienced this, but I've seen this, right? You know, when you're the spectator on one of your best friends or your cousin or sister or whatever, you're watching them give 100% to someone else and 20% to themselves. Like, I recently was having a conversation with my sister and we were, just chopping it up about relationships and things of that nature. And I had mentioned that my sister was having a conversation with me about my first marriage. And she just was asking like very important questions, that because I'm in the dynamic and I'm so fueled by making it work and so fueled by having this family dynamic and so fueled by not having a broken home or my children having a two-parent home, that I was willing to deal with the things that was going on. Now, mind you, I was in my early 20s. I didn't know what it meant to be a wife. I had no idea. I was figuring it out along the way. But when my sister was talking to me, I was like really walking myself through the situation and just really taking in that this was not a healthy dynamic by no means at all. And with that being said, I knew I needed to get out of it. I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to take the necessary steps to navigate out of that relationship, and I did lose myself. I didn't When I left out of that marriage, I had no idea who I was. I had spent so much time now being a mom and trying to figure out what it meant to be a wife and taking care of a household and still trying to find my footing in being able to be me. Now, at the time I was modeling, I was trying to go to school for fashion design and merchandising. I was trying to learn how to sew. Like, I'm self-taught in some respects on how to sew. So I had like a multitude of things going on, but I didn't have my spouse as a support system. He said some things to me that really hurt me to my core. And I didn't know how to move past that. I didn't have the communication tools to be able to move past that. He also didn't have the communication to be able to say that. But nonetheless, I put all of that aside and I focused 100% on him and the kids and the household. And I would urge anybody to never give 100% to someone else and forget about yourself. Like, the only thing that I genuinely think I did for myself, nope, I didn't really do anything. I think the 20% that I gave myself was making sure like I got up and, got my hair done and, you know, and which I didn't even go to the salon and do that. I did that myself because I had gone to school for cosmetology. So, yeah, I don't really think I was giving myself 20% outside of like the basic stuff, bathing, brushing my teeth, doing my hair, making sure that I was getting up and still doing the things that I needed to do. And that's never a good place to be in, where you are finding yourself giving so much to someone else that in the end, not only do you not have time for yourself, but you're trying to even figure out, is your favorite color this? And do you still like that food? And you end up like checking out so much on yourself that you don't even realize how much weight you gain or lost, that your hair is breaking off, that your skin is looking different, that your eyes are getting darker because you're stressed out, or that your body is giving you the signs that you're unhappy and that you have no internal joy. Someone can say yes to being in this relationship, but genuinely, like, their soul is screaming no. And I know I was saying yes to both marriages because it was something that I was trying to fill. It was a desire, it was a need, it was a void that I was trying to fill to make sure that at all costs I had that thing that I wanted, which was a family structure. I didn't grow up with my dad in the household. I grew up with my mom. And I, yes, had my grandparents, and my mom has 3 brothers. So, of course, I had my uncles. But my uncles had family of their own. And when I looked at my direct in-home dynamic, I didn't have what my cousins had. I didn't have what some of my friends had. I didn't have like 1, 2, 3, 4 of my closest friends that I grew up with had both of their parents in the household. Now, whether it was a beautiful dynamic or not, I mean, I was close enough to them to know what their households were like, but I didn't live with them day to day to know, whether their parents had a healthy relationship or whatever. So me just being an outsider looking in, knowing what it feels like to not have my dad in the household, I wanted that. And so I tried to, as an adult, provide that for my children. And though it ended up not being the healthiest, I couldn't get around losing this family structure in order to provide that for my children. What I didn't realize is that that was my pain and my hurt that I was trying to fulfill to give it to the little girl in me. And so now that I have like become an adult, gotten out of my second marriage, and I've healed from that and I recognized that I definitely was in a different season and a different space when I met my girlfriend to try to figure out like how again do I walk through this season of wanting to continue on this path of self-discovery and learning me and loving her at the same time, right? And so I said yes and my soul said yes and it felt really really good, but we also have to make sure that when we're falling in love with somebody or we're loving someone or entertaining the beginnings of what could be a really beautiful relationship, we have to be careful that when we fall in love thinking that we'll find ourselves in the other person. And that is so not factual. You are not the sum of another person. Most times people show up with the representative because they are afraid to put all of who they are on the table. So they give you what it is that they think you want or they think you need based on, the energy that you're giving or what have you. And because you're still learning yourself and you're still building your foundation, you feel like, "Oh my gosh, this person, I can really like finish healing and finish growing and all of these other things with this other human being." And that is not always factual. That is, I mean, matter of fact, that's not factual at all. You are not the sum of the other person. You are the summation of who you are, who you have been designed to be, who God has designated you to be in this earth, and what the gifts are that you are supposed to give back, what you are supposed to sow onto this earth. That's who you are. So the discovery of who you are has to be always first and foremost. So when you go out there and you start thinking that you can find yourself and the other person, what ends up happening is you lose exactly who you are. And it's only the little piece of you that you had left anyway. Because again, you hadn't really established the foundation. And yeah, I've done it both of my first marriages. I'm on this discovery. I mean, look, check this out. So I moved from my hometown, got into school, got life situated with the kids. They're doing their thing. I'm doing my thing. They're involved in sports. Of course, they're going to school. I went back to school. I'm working. I got all of these things. And I meet my second husband. And I look back and I be like, Chanel, what was you doing, baby? You was just beginning to mix everything up to start your foundation. Now, I will say this, I stood 10 toes down on being able to graduate from school. I was like, look, check this out. I'm not tapping into anything with you or anyone else until I graduate school. Period. I'm simply not doing it. I don't care. I I'm graduating from school and then we can talk about whatever comes next. In the process, um, yes, he stayed my friend, but when I look back as to where I was then and can understand things from a different perspective, I got finessed. But I didn't get finessed because I was healthy mentally and emotionally. I didn't get finessed because I was whole. I got finessed because I was still broken pieces, still desiring for that family dynamic. And so I ate it up. Like I was eating it, eating it, eating it. I was, look, okay, I sucked it up. And I mean, at life, you go through things because it helps to structure you to as to who you are and start to when you take yourself, your growth, your desires, what your purpose is in life seriously, you start to look at things from a different perspective wholeheartedly, you do. Oh my gosh, when I tell you I feel like I got finessed, but I can't be mad that because I was broken at the time. And again, I just was wanting what I was wanting and not as strong as I thought I was. Like I stood on business about school and I graduated. However, I didn't stand on business about what I really desired for my life. And I took the L's and I took the blows instead of seeing them as red flags. I did what so many of us do, which is like, you know what, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation, we're going to curve this. And yeah, I got finessed. It's okay. And I can laugh about it now because I know where I am now versus who I was then. And I was still a little girl on the inside, broken. And I have healed that little girl. And as the adult version of who I am now, I protect that little girl. And so when I start to see red flags pop up, oh no, 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 no. We're gonna step back away from that. We're gonna come up out of that because I'm not traveling back down that road again. I've worked too hard to get to where I am to allow anyone to come in my life and have me feeling crazy in a space that I've created in the dynamic of the beauty that I have now in my life. I'm not gonna do it. And I'm gonna say this. I had put this down in my notes. So, I mentioned a little bit ago of watching like your friends navigate this really crazy relationship that you're in. And I've held the hand of my friends and, you know, watch them carry a dream and then they forget to check in with themselves. And I reflect that I did that to myself. I've held my own hand and I've carried my dreams of what life was to look like for me and what I really wanted in my life. But I've always forgot to check in with myself. And I check in a lot with myself now, especially in the mornings, where I am mentally, emotionally. Am I still dealing with some residual effects of, I'm still growing in my career and building my podcast and building my blog page and, taking one step at a time to get to there, but I'm not where I used to be. Even in my new relationship with my partner, my journey of continuing self discovery is so beautiful. And I am afforded the space to have time to myself and dream and think and pray and meditate without being interrupted. Well, when you going to spend time with me? Or when you going to do this for me? Or when you going to do that for me? We afford each other the space to be. And whatever that be is in the moment, we give each other that space. And it is so beautiful. And I needed to have that. Especially now where I am at 42 years old, I needed to have that. And I say that because we should all be checking in with ourselves. We cannot just be in a relationship and again, giving so much of ourselves to the other person that we forget about ourselves. I have talked to so many women along the way that have said, some are older, some are about my age, and some are coming up in the space where I am, where all of my children are out of the house, they're grown, they're doing their own thing, right? Where they are saying, I don't know who I am. I don't even know if I like my spouse anymore because I don't know my spouse anymore. Like, our focus had become our family, our kids. We poured into just this dynamic, but we didn't pour into ourselves. I don't know if I like this person where I'm wanting to go. I want to travel, and this person wants to sit in the house all the time. I want to get out and go out and have dinner and explore new things. And this person wants to have me still cooking dinner every day. Like, why can't we create a new norm for ourselves and what that looks like? And so relationships tend to drift apart when you aren't one, focused on self, and two, coming back together with your partner to discuss the new things that you found out about yourself and your partner being genuinely interested in what that looks like for you. I know that my partner, I always advocate for her to have those moments where she can just think and journal and be and just, sit with herself. And then
All right, I want you to take a deep breath with me right here because, whew, This ain't like work. We're unpacking the beautiful, the complicated mess of loving someone while learning yourself. And I want you to sit with what's rising up in you right now. And while we're in this moment, I want to share something with you that came from the deepest part of me. It's a song, it's a part of my story in sound. And it's also called Loving Someone While Learning Yourself. Because sometimes when the words run out, the music speak. So here's a little break. Not really. Let's just fill in the space that you didn't know you needed in your healing. And I'll meet you right back here on the other side.
Sacred spell, loving someone while learning myself. Mm-hmm. Some nights I cry and don't even know why. You wipe the tears, just let them dry. You don't fix me, you just see me. And somehow that's the healing I needed deeply. I still got questions I ain't there to ask. Still got trauma that unpacks too fast. But you don't run, you don't rush to feel. You let the silence teach me what's real. I'm loving you while I learn me. Holding space where it's hard to breathe. Some days I show up full, some days I disappear. But your love stay near, even when I ain't clear. Can we grow in the unknown without pressure or guilt? Can I bloom in your arms while I rebuild? This ain't broken, it's a sacred spell. Loving someone while learning myself. Let me be a garden, not a glass. Water me.
Let's talk about it. Don't leave it inside your head. Write it out. If it's a vision, if it's a plan, if it's something, write it out so that you can have these moments. You know what I mean? You need to be able to visually read every day and see what it is that you are wanting so that you can make it happen. And then, know that and not then. I be looking at my show notes, y'all, while I'm doing the podcast, and I be wanting to make sure that I stay on topic, but I also, want to just give you the reality from beyond just the information. I like to make sure that y'all can relate to the topic and have the information that you need. So I like to write things out. Like I was just saying, telling my partner, write it down so that you can see the vision, make it plain, that you can put forth the effort and the work, but you have to have a reality check in there as well. So, you know, again, as I said, I have to have the space of being able to check in with myself and making sure that I even say, hey, when was the last time you paused for your self work? Right? Because when I first met my partner, she is dope, y'all. Let me just tell you, she is dope. Our birthdays are 8 days apart. And so it's like where she is in life right now, and I tell her this all the time, is like looking at myself at that age. So we do have an age gap between us, not too large, but we have an age gap between us. And where she is like, oh my gosh, I was there. I was in that space. Wow, is that what that looked like? To other people. So, like, while I was healing and growing at the age that she is now, it's like, "Oh my god, is that what that looked like while I was going through this healing journey? Oh my gosh." And so I can love her differently. I can love on her differently. I have a different level of patience to be able to see because I see her putting in the work for her healing, for her journey. I see her doing these self discoveries. And so I always make sure that while I'm loving on her and empowering her and lifting her up, that I'm checking in with myself because I can't be good for her if my cup is empty, right? How am I going to come and lift her up and be there for her if my cup is empty? I can't. And I'm not gonna do that. I simply refuse to try to keep giving from an empty cup. If I don't have it, I don't have it. And sometimes when we're not taking the time to pour into ourselves with whatever it is that makes you happy, going to get your nails done, reading a book, you know, having a weekend trip, just whatever that is that looks like for you, you really get to a space where you are just completely depleted, especially if you still have children in the house. So it's important to do the things that make you happy. You also need a reality check where you are asking yourself, are you hoping their love will fill in the gaps where you haven't healed? And it is important to understand that a person's love can only love you to the capacity that they have. So where you want a love so deep and so infectious, you have to check the trap to see if that person has that type of love. But you also have to be willing to allow them to love you to the capacity that they have. How can I say this? Oh my gosh, because I want to make sure that it comes across where it's understood with clarity, right? We'll use gallons and pints. If you are a gallon human being and you're loving or dating a pint, you have to understand that they don't have enough to be able to fill you as the gallon. You have to be equally matched, a gallon for a gallon. Now, here's the caveat to that. If you see right now that this person is a pint, however, they are working on themselves to be more open, to be healed, to be in a different space and capacity, then they could eventually be working toward, or they are eventually working towards being a gallon to meet you where you are. And then y'all can have this co journey together to become from gallons to barrels or whatever the next, thing is that goes up from a gallon. But my point is that you have to understand that, or let's just flip it, right? You may be the pint and they may be the gallon, and you're really pouring all that you have that you can into this person, but you don't have enough to fill them up. So I say that to say that you have to heal from your brokenness. Their love is not going to be enough to overshadow the broken pieces of you. And that's ultimately, for me, it's not fair to ask someone to love you so much so that you're trying to diminish the broken pieces, because eventually they're going to come back to the surface, because that person or your partner, whomever, may trigger you and you didn't even know that you are still triggered. But it's like, yeah, that trigger is attached to that trauma that you didn't want to heal because you were wanting their love to fill in the gaps of what you haven't healed. No, 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 no. No, no, no. You have to heal from that. You have to. So that goes back into those check-ins. Hey, what am I really doing? Am I trying to avoid dealing with this trauma and just wanting them to love me so much so that I forget about it? That's unhealthy. Genuinely, it is unhealthy. The next check-in or reality check that you need to have with yourself, is your identity tied more to being their support than being you? When I first asked myself that question, I had to step back. I was like, ooh, like, no, seriously. Like, I had to really think about, is my identity, or was my identity tied more into being the support of in my past marriages than it was to being me? And genuinely, it was. Genuinely, I took on these titles as that's who I am. Yes, I operate in the space of a mother. Yes, I operate in the space at that time as a wife. Yes, I operate in the space of being a budding entrepreneur. Yes, I operate in the space of being a life coach. Yes, I operate in the space of still having a 9 to 5 while I'm building my business and my life coaching business and again, my podcast and my blog page. Yes, those are spaces that I operate in, but that is not who I am. And there is a big, stark difference. And so when I reflected back at me taking those titles and making them who I am when I was no longer a wife, it was like, well, what do I do? What I've been being a wife for so long, what do I do? Because that's not who I operated in those spaces, but that is not ultimately all of who I am. I have so much more to me than who I am. And in that process, I have discovered so much more about me. I don't think genuinely I ever solely liked the color purple. I love the movie, but I don't think itself I liked the color purple. I never gravitated towards purple, but I would just say that's my favorite color. You know what I mean? Like I did not ever really genuinely gravitate towards that color. I always gravitated towards pink, but I would be like, I don't even like pink. Purple is my favorite color. Bitch, no, it's not. Like, no, it's not. I am a Barbie girl. I love the color pink. I love Barbies. Now, here's the thing, I don't go above and beyond on everything having to be pink, but there are a few things, like I have a muscle car that it has to be pink, okay? The muscle car is laid out, but it definitely has to be pink, it got to be glossy, baby, it got the that thing is gonna be right when I get it. Okay, sidetrack, but it's the point that I was so wrapped up in being something for other people, and it became more important than to be who I am or who I was at the time. Now, I'm only living in authenticity and genuinely at this age of 42, I not have one F to give about what anybody thinks about me. Not on F's to give because I think about this. If I was to say to one of my best friends, because there's 5 of us, all of them girls, like they are all my sisters, but all of those grown women, excuse me, are my sisters. However, if I was to say to one of them, "Hey, I don't like that you do that. That ain't that ain't it. I don't like how you live your life like that." I could say that from the standpoint of just being the spectator to their life, and I want them to be happy, healthy, whole, and good, right? But their life ain't my life, and I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So it's my job as their friend to check in with them and be like, "Hey, why you doing that? Like, is that helping you? Is that, you know, working out in your favor?" Is like whatever the case may be. But they have to live their lives. That is their journey. And who am I to stop their journey? Like they may be doing what they are doing because it's some unhealed parts of them. So it is not my job to tell them that I don't like it. It is my job to get them to reflect on what it is that they are doing and is it helping them? Is it making them a better individual, a better version of themselves? That is what my job is. I have no F's to give. If I had turned around and let's just say I told my sister, "Look, I don't like your husband." Is that going to stop her from being married to him? Absolutely not. She probably just not going to invite me to her house. Or she probably going to tell me, "Hey, look, this is my choice and you can either respect it or you can kick rocks. You don't have to come over here. This is the family that I have created, and you can respect it or not. But if you don't respect it, then you can't come over." You understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't have any F's to give about what someone else likes or doesn't like when it comes to my life because for so long I cared about being something to someone else for their comfort and their sense and sensibility. Nope, not doing it anymore. I don't care. And it's not that I don't care about the person, because I do. And that person's feelings does matter to me. But if your feelings begin to infringe upon my journey and your feelings begin to infringe upon me doing what makes me happy, well, I can't rock with it. I can't. And whatever the lesson is that I learned from that is just gonna be the lesson that I learned, but it's mine to learn. Now, of course, if I was out here doing some real heavy something, I don't even know what the heavy is, because I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do anything, but whatever the heavy may be, right? And somebody comes to me and still says, "Hey, I don't like it." You gotta change that "I don't like it" into, "Hey, how is that helping you? How is that making you the greatest version of yourself?" I don't care what you don't like. And that's why people that do certain things just be like, I'm going to do them anyway because this is what I want to do. This is my life. It's not about hurting you or disappointing you, and that's the thing that we gotta get away from. We gotta stop living our lives based on not wanting to hurt other people or disappoint other people, because you're hurting and disappointing yourself, trying to be something to someone else for their comfortability and their sense and sensibility. And I know that is such a crazy dynamic because they're saying what they're saying based on the fact that they love and they care about you, and they don't want you to be hurt or navigate through this weird journey of pain and destruction and all of that. However, sometimes you have to step back and allow people to live the lives that they are going to live. Now, I'm not saying you gotta always be there to pick up the pieces, because that is their choice decisions. Respect it and support them, and always be there to have the food for thought in the conversation. One day it's gonna click and it's gonna come around. I promise it will, because I think back to the conversations that I had with my mom and my dad about things that I was doing, and I just was like, "Whatever, Imma do it my way." And I had to learn the lessons. But now where I am, my mom softly reminds me, "Baby, this has always been your journey, and you've always did what you wanted to do." And the moment that I learned that this was your journey to take, the easier it became for me to navigate life with you as your mom. And that was so profound and so epic, and it was such an opening for us. It was so beautiful. I love that. And then having that moment with my mom allowed me to have that space with my children. It allowed me to be able to see my children in a different capacity and allow them to work through their own journey. Just, it was really, yeah, it was really beautiful. But again, make sure that you have that reality check where you are making sure that your identity is not tied into being more of someone else's support than it is being you, that you are walking your journey and you are living it authentically and out loud and unapologetically. Now, whatever the consequences that come of you being you, you got to deal with it. Rewards, bad consequences, good, bad, or indifferent, you got to honor that. Now, I'm going to move on a little bit because I could talk all day about that, as y'all can see. But there is this shift that ended up taking place. Like I said, I got to a certain point in my life and I started reflecting back on these conversations that I had with my parents when I was married both times. And I I reflected that I had two shifts in my life. I had a shift where I was just loving my person without learning about myself, right? And I had another shift where I was loving and learning. And so that first shift that took place where I was loving without learning became a dependency on that person, and it really was disguised as, like, devotion to that person, like, "Oh, no, I'm devoted to this marriage. I'm devoted to this relationship. I'm devoted just because you are in a relationship with another person. And that didn't come out right because it sounds like you can be in a relationship with something else. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, being in a relationship with someone does not mean that you lose yourself in a process, but it does often come to that. And I've mentioned it throughout this episode. Like, you get into the relationship and you want to love on them and you want to lift them up and you want to empower them and you want to pour all of this good stuff, but you cannot lose yourself. And because so much we focus on the other person and keeping them happy and all of these things, that we lose who we are versus having the conversations in the beginning of saying, hey, there are going to be moments and times where I need time to myself. If your person cannot honor that, then that's not the person that you need to be in a relationship with. There's going to be times and moments where you're going to want to go hang out with your friends and it doesn't include your partner. That person has to be able to honor that because you two, at the end of the day, are still individuals. You cannot become so dependent on that person for everything that happens in your life that you forget again to check in with yourself. Now, don't get it twisted. I love my partner to pieces. We laugh. We are like two big kids together. And it is so amazing to have a love that is so free. It is so free. I'm free to be the silly me. I'm free to be the serious me. I'm free to just sit quiet in a space with my partner, with her, and not feel like we have to talk. Like, our energy is so interconnected with each other that we can be doing 2 different things and still look, y'all, it's so dope. But we also know how to be separate too. We can each sit in individual rooms and still share in moments of laughter. Like, I might be sitting in my office watching a movie and I run in here in the room and tell her something and she's like, "Well, I may run to the bedroom and be like, "Hey, look, ABC XYZ just happened," and we both bust out laughing and then go right back into doing whatever it is that we were individually doing. Excuse me. But it is the beauty of her not losing herself and me not losing myself just because we are loving each other. Codependency is such an unhealthy space. It has unmet boundaries. You begin to lose your voice of who you are because you're their everything and they're your everything. Yeah, no, that's not healthy. It is not. I was reading this other article, y'all. I'm naturally a nerd. And there, Ross Allen Rosenberg is his name. He talked about self-love deficit disorder, which is the notion that you give until you're empty because you believe that your worth comes from their needs being met. Excuse me, I gotta make sure that I get that right. You give until you're empty because you believe that who you are, your worth, comes from their needs being met, period. And that is a trap. Like, if I ain't never seen a trap, it is a trap. Again, I mentioned earlier that you are not the sum of someone else. I am not the sum of my father, my mother, my sister, my brothers, my cousins, my uncles. I'm not the sum of my family. I'm not the sum of my past marriages. I'm not the sum of my partner. I am the sum of whomever I have been designed to be by the Most High, period. And the moment that we get away from believing that our worth is tied into someone else and all that we do for them, the better that we will be. And here's the funny thing. So I was watching this clip on Instagram, and she said that she used to feel like her worth was tied into when she would get invited somewhere. And when she walk in, she's like, "Hey, how can I help? How can I jump in? Blah, blah, blah." And she said she had to get away from that because that is not all that she's worth. She's worth way more than that, but she had to recognize that she was invited to enjoy in the festivities of the event. Not that they called her there to be a helping hand, but to literally enjoy. And I too had to do that. If I am invited somewhere, I have to learn, and I had to, and I'm still working through that because if it's somebody that I care about or what have you, I do wanna jump in and I wanna help and I wanna be a lending hand. However, I also have to do a quick check-in and see where I am. Are you in the space of being able to do that? Because if you're not, then don't go and put yourself out there. Are you operating on a full cup, a quarter cup? Like, where are you? Because if you're not in a good space for that, then let's not let's not tap into let's not tap into that. Yeah. Yeah, let's not do that. Know that your worth and your value is not tied into that you do or anything that you do for another human being. Like, if somebody doesn't see your worth without you doing a thing, then that's not the person that you need to be with or you need to be hanging around. So having those moments of feeling that your worth is tied into all that you have given to a person needs to be discussed. It does. It needs to be discussed, and you need to figure out where the root of that is stemming from. And I say that because if a person is not giving that back to you, right? And not pouring that same type of energy back into you, resentment starts to take place. And you begin to resent the person for unspoken expectations that you placed onto them because of what it is that you chose to do and the fact that you never gave yourself space. You love your person, but when you look at them, then you're like you're waking up tired, you're feeling bitter, you're looking at them like you don't even like them anymore. Now you're disconnected because the whole time that you were spending caring for them, you neglected you and you never spoke up about what it is that you needed from that person. So while you're showing and telling that person, like, hey, I'm going to show up for you, have you ever taken the time to say, while I'm showing up for you, these are the spaces and the ways that you can show up for me? Because if not, then you can't fault that person for not showing up for you in that way. Now, true enough, I know I have been guilty of pouring out my love based on what I want in return because it's always been taught to me treat people how you want to be treated. And so the way that my love language towards other people is loving them from head to toe, everything about the person, and and being like, I'm going to support that person and I'm going to give that person the world, and if I want them to have that, I'm going to give and I'm going to give and I'm going to give and I'm going to give. Now, have I learned to reel that in? Yes, I have, because I had to. I was pouring so much of myself into someone else that, again, I forgot to check on me. And I can't do that in this season where I am. There are things that I want. There are things that I desire. There are things that I need. There are things that I have to have. Now, am I going to go and get those things? Yes. But I'm going to go get them with a full cup, and I'm gonna give from my overflow. And if I just don't have it, then I'm gonna be honest. Hey, look, the day ain't the day that I really got it. Like I want to, be ABCXYZ, but today I don't have it to be ABCXYZ, and I'm sorry. I don't want to give you anything halfway. So I either give it to you all, like when I can pour from my overflow, or I'm not gonna half do it because you're gonna feel the emptiness of what I can't give. I wanna make sure that I'm pouring from my overflow, and I wanna make sure that I'm also speaking up for myself and what it is that I need. And the only way that you know what it is that you need is when you're checking in with yourself and that you're able to be honest with your person. I also recognize that resentment comes when you don't take the time to address the issues, or that you're hoping that the red flags will just dissipate without dealing with them. If those red flags or those are things that you're seeing from the beginning, they don't just abruptly change at all. Like, maybe that person needs to do some healing. Maybe that person doesn't even realize that what you are seeing as a red flag is a red flag and it needs to be addressed. Have the conversations, like, seriously, because a part of you discovering you is knowing what you're willing to handle and what you're not willing to deal with. It's knowing what you can have in your life and what you can't. It's also knowing what's in alignment for your life and where you're headed and what's not. And I know that people be having like their feelings hurt and things of like that nature. However, you don't have to stay connected to somebody that's not in alignment with where you're trying to go. Like, how much, I mean, I know they say like opposites attract and things of that nature, and that's true. But you also have to have somebody that's compatible with you. Like, you can't be the world traveler and then you're married with a complete introvert who doesn't wanna see the world with you. You're gonna constantly feel empty. It's like, I've traveled the world and I have all of these memories, but you're not a part of any of my memories. And that is something that I need. I need a person that's gonna be willing to travel the world with me. Everybody has different desires in life, and everybody has different needs and different wants. And if you're so busy loving on a person, you're ignoring the red flags, and you're not checking in and pouring in and loving and continuing to discover yourself and continuing to build yourself up and telling the person that you're connected with, like, hey, these are the things that I need, baby, you're setting your life up for disaster. And what's the point in doing that? Time is a commodity that we don't get back. It's not in reality that we get to rewind time. Like, when women are older than what they are, and they're like, "You found the fountain of youth? Oh, baby, where the fountain of youth at?" No, 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 no. She looks young because she is taking care of self. She's thriving. She's living. She's being. She's not just existing in this world. He looks young because he's living. He knows what he needs to make it through life, to get through life. Why they have these power couples out here, where these power couples are happy and healthy and whole and doing a dang thing, and they navigating through their issues and their problems, and they're being able to still come back and be strong or be stronger, is because they're two individuals knowing what they need, what they desire, having the communication, having the tools to be able to navigate through each situation, and understanding that in the relationship, it's not me versus you, it's us versus the problem, and coming into agreement with what the problem is. And you only know that by having two individuals. Period. Over time, what ends up happening is those small neglects become big wounds. And if you're not taking full accountability for the fact that you are not checking in with yourself, you only have you to blame for where you're feeling empty. One, because you don't know what you need, like I said, and two, you're not communicating with your person what it is that you need from them. And the fact of the matter is, you always end up blaming it on your person, and none of it is ever your fault, and that's wrong. I even had to recognize that for the pain that I felt, it was because I stayed somewhere longer than I I necessarily needed to. I communicated what I needed. I communicated what I wanted, and all of those needs went unmet, and yet I stayed. So whose fault is that? That person, that individual showed me exactly who he was. He showed me exactly what he was and was not going to do, and how much he cared and did not care. As long as his needs were being met, then he was cool. But when I interrupted that, because I started checking in and focusing on me, now it was like, wait a minute, hold on, hold on, hold on. because I don't understand this dynamic right here. I don't understand. And when you start shaking shit up and you start moving around and really focusing on you, baby, you start to get a different perspective, a different viewpoint on what you have been dealing with for so long. And so once you decide to take you back and really get serious about you, you start cutting out the foolishness and the bullshit in relationships. Period. You start recognizing, hey, if I'm getting out of this one, the next one that I tap into, oh, baby, it has to either be on point, it has to be right, or nothing at all. You're not going to keep walking down the same road over and over again, hoping for a different result once you have clarity about who you are and what you want and expect from your life. You're not going to do that. And believe me, I've been in that place too. When you decide that it's going to be about you so that you can get the right person in your life, you are no longer willing to accept the bullshit. You're not. It's when you stop growing that the relationship becomes stagnant too. Is it when you decide to stop growing and it just settle for the bare minimum, settle for the bullshit, settle for, well, I guess this is just what life is, this is just it. The relationship stops growing. And who has time for that? Life is about growth and elevation and ever evolving. You're not who I am at 42 is not who I was at 32, 22, 12, literally. Each decade of my life, I have grown in some space or capacity. I've earned more wisdom. I've gotten more knowledge. I have lost and gained friends. I've been married twice. Like, I have had a lot happen in my life. I've earned a couple of degrees. I got some certifications. I have fallen. I have gotten back up. I have tried. It failed. I've tried. It succeeded. Like, life is about ever evolving and continuing to grow. And it's the same for a relationship. There is that self expansion model again that comes in or comes to mind again, and just remembering a couple points that it had. When you enter love to expand your world and your world stays the same, you'll resent the staying the same. You enter love to expand your world. But if your world stays the same, you'll resent staying the same. Nobody enters into a relationship with someone to just be stagnant. Nobody. Think about over the course of your life, how your wardrobe has changed, how your hair has changed, how your makeup has changed, how the height of your heels have changed, how what you find important has changed. The fact that you don't find every situation so monumentous that you need to check a person at the gate for it, right? Like, think about that. You do not enter into a relationship with someone to stay at the dock. The root word is ship. And what does a ship do? It takes you from one place to the next. So you should never stay at the dock. It should always be going. You might start off in a little tugboat, but come time at the end of the relationship, as long as it's the healthy, right one. At some point, you should be in a big old cruise ship. It is ever evolving, ever growing. And each level that you are choosing yourselves so that you can choose each other, that there is continuous growth. So I understand when people say, hey, I want somebody that's coming into the relationship whole and healthy. Yes, you want someone that's coming into the relationship with emotional intelligence, with maturity, with a level of smarts to be able to, navigate not only their emotions, but yours, being able to navigate each situation as a whole. right? That's what you wanted. And so therefore, it goes back to it. You building your own foundation, knowing what you need and what you want in it so that you can navigate the right way. So this leads me into loving well while learning you. You have to become intimately acquainted with yourself. And I've been talking about that through the whole episode. And you want to always ask yourself the pertinent questions. Who am I beneath the relationship role? Because that is just the space that you're operating in. What do I want and what do I need? You have to treat yourself with the kindness that you would treat a friend. And you build your self worth not being reliant on others. You have to know you like flowers, treat yourself to flowers. You like fine dining, go out and eat fine dining. You like to go get your hair, nails, toes done, do that. You like to travel, do that. Do it without the expectation of someone doing it for you, but also be very aware these are the things that you like so that you can communicate them to the person that you are connecting with. It's not selfish to choose you, but it is necessary. So that as you're saying you want somebody to be whole and healed in the relationship, you are the same. Boundaries in your life is another important one, and I don't even know how I missed that earlier, but setting boundaries not only for yourself, but for the relationship is rooted in your becoming. Boundaries aren't about shutting down. Boundaries are about defining the space so you can breathe. And whatever the type of relationship that you have should not be making you shrink, or you shouldn't feel forced to shrink. If it does, then you don't need to be in that. Do not ignore the signs of that. That is a red flag. Don't feel like you have to shrink who you are in order to become. And that is all in those beginning conversations that you have in the relationship, but so many times we don't. It's like, "Ooh, he look good. Ooh, she look good." Next thing you know, you going out, and then you in the bed with him, and you don't know nothing about him or her. It's like, how the hell we get from date one to being in the bed? What the world? People operating off of emotions and not logic. People operating in spaces. And baby, that soul tie thing is real. If you don't understand soul ties, then woo, child, that's a whole nother thing. My God, that's a whole nother thing. I think I'm gonna have to do an episode on that because that is, and it's gonna be, out of sequence, but that just sprung up in my spirit. I'm gonna have to do that because now ooh, mm, now, if you're already in a relationship where you feel like y'all have a healthy dynamic, but some things have just happened along the way, life is life, you've gotten a little bit disconnected. I don't necessarily resent the person, but I don't know where we are. Now you need to have the conversation and reframe the relationship as a co journey, but not a saving mission. Like we should both be on a journey to reach our greatness so that we are both reaping the rewards of what it is to be in the relationship together. When you are entering in the relationship or entering into a union to complete yourself, you can expect failure. But when you enter in the relationship to expand together, you can expect growth. Again, if you going into a relationship and you're thinking that this person is going to love me to complete me and fill in the gaps from the places that I haven't healed, and you're trying to complete yourself from the other person, no, baby, you can expect failure. You cannot say, I want this person to come into my life happy, healthy, whole. And you're still looking at it that that person needs to complete you. But if you're entering into it, happy, healthy, whole, or you've already had your foundation set and you're walking into it with the mind frame that we're going to do this thing together, now you can expect growth. To me, it is really important to speak life over yourself and over your relationship. I like that I found a few words In the process of writing my workbooks, I found a few things that really, or two sentences that really mattered to me so that when I tapped into a relationship, it was I bring whole me. I choose whole us. I can't be whole and my partner be broken, or my partner be whole and I be broken. So I need both my partner and I to choose ourselves individually so that we can be whole together, right? The distance between us being two whole individuals, or let me backtrack. The distance between one person being broken and the other person being whole is where so much pain happens, because you're seeing life from one perspective and they're seeing life from a different perspective. They're not choosing themselves to be a better version of themselves. They're choosing you so that you can fill in, or you're choosing them so that they can fill in the parts of you that is still broken. And it's going to be pain in that. And then the other person's not going to necessarily know how to help you because you're not really looking. I mean, vice versa. It doesn't necessarily have to be you, but you may not know how to help them because they're not really looking to heal. They're really just looking for you to fill them up and keep them and carry them on forward. And it never works like that. Never. And that's how I feel. I see parts of my last marriage being where my partner wasn't, or he wasn't really looking to heal or grow from whatever it is that he was dealing with. It was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to rest on the weight, like all of my weight onto her, and then she'll be able to carry me through because she's strong enough for the both of us." No, I'm not. I'm not strong enough for 2 people for our entire lives. I may be strong enough to hold the weight for a little bit, but at some point, it's gonna get too heavy for me to carry, right? It's gonna get to a point where you aren't gonna be able to carry that weight anymore, and you're gonna have to let it go, and that's okay. Understanding that when you see this, understanding that you need to communicate, that is big, and you have to communicate from vulnerability and clarity, not emotions and just spewing out words because you're not knowing how to verbalize what it is that you need to say. It's okay to let your person know, like, hey, I'm still figuring me out and I'm trying, right? I'm out here, I'm doing it, I'm choosing me so that I can choose us, and I will show up for you, but I need you to show up for me too. And it goes back into what I've been saying all along the way. Communicating so that your person knows what you need from them. That's not just honesty, that is sacred. That's adulting. That's healing. That is being honest about where you are. And every time that you see that you two are able to sit down and have these type of conversations, and you're learning not only yourself and what works for you, but you're also learning your person, and your person is learning themselves and they're learning you, celebrate that progress. You don't have to celebrate the perfection or celebrate at the end. You're learning. You will mess up. And messing up doesn't necessarily mean that you failed your love. It just means that you're still growing. You're still becoming. You're still learning. You're still walking through a, a full relationship with becoming the better versions of yourselves each and every day. Toast to the scars, toast to the stumbles, toast to when you chose up to choose you and love them and love the relationship as a whole. Like, we're so quick to not want to communicate, and we're so quick to not even try. But again, I'm not speaking from the place of being in a completely unhealthy relationship. That's no. No, 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 no. Unhealthy is unhealthy. So let that go, because then that part, you got to know that that person is just not for you when it is completely toxic and unhealthy. And toxic environments and toxic relationships only breeds more toxicity. Like, get the hell out of that. A S. I'm talking about the relationship that you see that you 2 can work together, and the relationship where you see it's 2 people that is trying their best to become continuously the best versions of themselves, and they're choosing the relationship, and they're choosing to show up for each other every single day as they're choosing to show up for themselves so that the relationship can continue to grow. Toast to, again, the learning, the progress, the growing, the love that you and your person shares between each other. And here is my personal toast to you. Because what would the episode be without giving a toast, right? What would it be? So I want to give a toast to the one who's holding someone's heart while you're still finding yours. I know exactly what that feels like. I'm toasting to the one who's torn between devotion and discovery. Understand that you do not have to be dependent upon that person, and no one should ever require you to be solely dependent upon them. I'm toasting to may you be able to continue to love courageously and learn mercifully. May you stay soft enough to feel and strong enough to heal. And may your love be a mirror and not a mask. All right now. I like that toast. That toast was, ooh, all right. Yes. Look, I felt that from my spirit, from my experiences. So I hope that this episode has resonated with you, that you have gotten something from this episode. I hope that this episode has touched you in a way that it is moving you where you can begin your journey into discovering yourself while you're loving someone else, and that you and your partner can be on this journey of life together, having individual journeys and having a co journey. I want to close this episode out in prayer, and I am going to begin to start doing this more often because I think it's so pivotal to not just close out an episode and just be like, all right, y'all, peace out, but to serve as a reminder that prayer is so beneficial and so important in our lives individually and collectively. If you are not a person of prayer, you can leave this at this moment. But this is something that I feel really compelled to begin to do. So here we go. Father, thank you. Thank you for love that doesn't demand for us to be perfect. Thank you for the relationships that teach ourselves and we're able to embark in a space of teaching others as we lean into someone, to ourselves. Father, please remind us that love isn't at cross purposes with growth. Let our ties not limit our truth, but invite it. And let our relationships, Father, be fields and not cages. Father, help us to love in freedom. Help us learn in love, and help us become the people we promised each other that we would in you. In Christ Jesus' name, I say thank you and pray. Amen. Again, I hope you got something out of this episode that you can share with someone else, that you can take with you and share it with your partner or your person, and growing in your relationship individually and collectively. Until next time, love, light, and peace to you all. Make sure that you're following me on Instagram at Provoke Change, TikTok at Provoke Change. Have a good one.